For most of my life, I felt like I had a split personality. I felt like there were two sides to me that just seemed to contradict each other and just didn't make sense. It's this weird paradox that I couldn't explain. On the one hand, I'm a highly sensitive person. The other part of me is high sensation seeking. This part is like living with the gas pedal pressed to the floor all the time. Go, 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 go. Give me something new. And when I looked at the people around me, I saw that they divide themselves mostly into one or the other, but I'm both. And maybe you are too. In his book, The Dandelion and the Orchid, Dr. Thomas Boyce describes HSPs as orchids. We have highly sensitive nervous systems and the ability to process that information deeply. This can make us prone to overstimulation and burnout, but it also gives us deep insights and empathy. And if you want to know more about what makes highly sensitive people function the way they do, I did another video on exactly that in the DOES framework that explains everything. So I'll leave a link to that in the description below. You can check that out after this one. Highly sensitive people make up about 15 to 20% of the population, but there's another almost as rare subset of biological traits that seems to be exactly the opposite, called high sensation seekers, that are almost as rare. This group not only has a genetic predisposition to seek high stimulation, but they actually function better under higher levels of stress than the average person. And in a small group of people, estimated to be between 7 and 10%, HSP and HSS overlap. And this creates what I call the restless orchid. So let's look at the restless orchid. We're going to start with what makes a person high sensation seeking. We're going to look at the tug of war between these two biological traits. And at the end, I'm going to teach you how to harness both sides of your personality so they complement each other instead of compete. So you have a life that's more vivid and meaningful and to unlock your true potential as a leader. In the 1960s, Marvin Zuckerman first identified high sensation seeking as a need for novel, complex, and intense experiences. And he found that people who possess these traits seek those out in three distinct ways. First is thrill seeking, which is speed, heights, physical risk. Then is experience seeking, immersing yourself in art, music, exotic foods, travel. And lastly was disinhibition, basically social spontaneity. And when we can't fulfill our need for stimulation, we get bored. Repetition and monotony drive us crazy. And it's not just boredom from not having something to do. We crave novelty. We have to have something new to do, a new experience, a new challenge, new information. And this isn't just a quirky personality. This is actual biology. People with HSS possess what's called the adventure gene. This changes our relationship with dopamine. We're literally less sensitive to dopamine than the average person, which means we need more dopamine in order to feel like we're at baseline. People with HSS also have lower levels of monoamine oxidase, a chemical in the brain that clears out dopamine. So in effect, our brains crave more dopamine because they're less sensitive to it, but when we get it, it hangs around longer. So this is a completely different experience than most people have with dopamine. One way to think about this is think about cars. Most people are driving around in everyday cars, but high sensation seekers, they're basically driving F1 cars. And trying to drive at 25 miles an hour through your neighborhood would be a nightmare. That car is not designed for that. It doesn't run very well at those slowest speeds. But when you get it on the track, you get up to 100, 150, 200 miles an hour going flat out, that engine hums. That's exactly what it's meant to do. Well, that's kind of how our brains are. Other people in their regular cars have no problem. For us, it's like, we're not meant for this. This is boring. This isn't where we want to go, and we want to go faster. When we get on that track, we outpace those other cars. We just leave them in the dust because now we're in our zone. This is where we're meant to be. We're meant to be in that high stimulation environment. That's HSS. But there's another critical factor that you must keep in mind when thinking about HSS. And that is how we express this is very much a product of our environment. Basically, it can be expressed as prosocial or antisocial behaviors. In the antisocial camp, you have things like partying too much, drug abuse, high risk taking, adrenaline junkie behavior, those kinds of things. In the prosocial camp, you have travel, exotic food, people who engage in high stimulating jobs like firefighter, military, pilot, people who like sports like rock climbing and skydiving. These are all healthy ways to express this high sensation seeking. So ultimately, high sensation seeking can either look like an adrenaline junkie who has to push the boundaries all the time and put themselves at great risk, or it can be very helpful and somebody who seeks novelty and adventure in new experiences. two sides of the same coin. What happens when you pair that with sensory processing sensitivity or the highly sensitive person? Well, think about that race car again. If you have HSS, that might sound like a really good time. Yeah, I want to take an F1 car out there. But if I dropped you into the driver's seat of an F1 car mid-race at 200 miles an hour with no training at all, that would be terrifying. Sometimes that's what it feels like to be this restless orchid. Your desire for high sensation might drive you into a very highly stimulating, high-paced environment that you're not actually prepared for, and then your sensitive brain will get overwhelmed and shut down and panic. But don't worry. Like I said, we are actually designed for high-pressure environments, but we just need to approach it in our way. And once you understand how that works, everything changes. But before we get into that, I want to look at two distinct characteristics of this particular combination that's critical that you know. The first is habituation. Essentially, once our brain decides that something isn't important anymore, we stop seeing it. It becomes like a blind spot. Have you ever written yourself a Post-it note to remind you of something and put it like maybe on your bathroom mirror, and then realize 3 months later it's still there and you haven't moved it or paid any attention to it in months? That's habituation. This is why a lot of people like us have very cluttered desks. We put something down, we make a note, we think it's important, so we write it down, and then our brain habituates to it and we don't even see it. And then we put something on top of it because we didn't even notice it was there to be covered up until we have just stuff everywhere. At this point, if you're like me, you're thinking, this sounds a lot like another neuro difference. And you're right. There's a strong correlation between ADHD and high sensation seeking. Though they are not technically the same thing, there's a lot of overlap. Another key trait about this is low intensity fatigue. It can actually be exhausting for us to be understimulated. Is when we're in a low intensity environment without enough to stimulate our brains start looking for stimulation just to find something to bring that dopamine level up so we can feel it. And that becomes very fatiguing and very exhausting. This is why when you're in a boring meeting or stuck on a plane or in a long car ride and it finally ends, you feel exhausted. You didn't do anything. You were just sitting there the whole time, but you were so bored that your brain was redlining, trying to find something to do, something to think about, something to give it interest and raise that dopamine level. It seems paradoxical, but it's true. And the flip side of this is when you raise the intensity of the environment just enough, then we go into flow state. Okay, this is what I'm meant to do. Let's do this. I am going. We're gonna do this in that order. I'm gonna prepare for that. I got this handled. We're all set. Let's go. Those are the kinds of situations we're optimized for. That's what we're meant to be doing. As a bartender, I always found I made the most mistakes when things were slow. When we got busy, I had customers ordering and drink tickets on the printer and servers asking me questions. Then I am go, zoom, cranking out drinks and making no mistakes, and everything is just flowing. That's a really good example of where we are optimized to function best. It's actually a name for this. It's called the Yerkes-Dodson law. Everybody has an optimal level of stimulation where they function best. And for us, that optimal level is a little higher than normal. Now you understand the why. Let's look at the how. This combination of HSP and HSS is rare. And as a result, I find that the way I have to approach most new situations and learning new skills and challenges and my work is actually different than most people. This is one of the reasons that a lot of us struggle in school. It's not designed to teach us the way we learn best. When you let us learn on our own, we develop our own strategies and we learn things very deeply. We're going to look at exactly why that is and how we can tune our strategies to best optimize ourselves. And here are strategies I personally use. How do we satisfy our need for stimulation while satisfying our need for calm? We satisfy it with complex novelty. Seek out activities and hobbies that demand a lot of focus, but don't have a lot of environmental noise. This is one of the reasons I love riding motorcycles. For a long time, I was a very avid rock climber. Both of these are physically high stakes environment that engage our nervous system on a high level. They demand a lot of focus and they drown out a lot of the environmental noise around us. A lot of people like to work or study with music in the background and the TV on, or split the time between two screens and claim they're multitasking. They're not. There's been a lot of studies on this. I'm sorry, most people are not able to multitask, and that includes you. But since our brains crave stimulation, sometimes it can be useful to give them something to drown out, but not TV or movies or music in the background, but brown noise. The way this works is I wear noise canceling headphones with some brown noise playing, and This is a particular frequency of static that the HSP nervous system finds very calming and soothing. At the same time, it gives the HSS brain extra stimulation that isn't actually distracting from the task at hand. So it makes it much easier to focus while also not feeling like you have to have something else going on. And that's one of the reasons why I love riding my motorcycle, because it's a lot to do. You got to coordinate your hands and your feet. You've got to constantly scan, decide where to steer the bike, and make decisions. And so there's a lot of high stimulation going. And the fact that it's a more high stakes activity than driving in a car gives me that stimulation that my HSS system needs. The loud engine and the wind noise actually is like brown noise, and it drowns everything else out. To me, a good ride is both calming and invigorating. I call that intensity without static. Rock climbing can be very much the same way, but it doesn't have to be high risk or physical. Any activity that gives you the right combination of stimulation and the ability to focus is what's giving you that complex novelty. You have to figure out what's right for you. And I would start by looking at what you already do as your hobbies, or what you want to do as your hobbies. Whatever it is that you're already engaging in is going to give you a clue as to how you best express this. So look for more ways to build complex novelty into your life. The more opportunities you have to engage in these complex novel activities that really engage both ends of your neurological programming, the more happy and satisfied you're going to be with your life. Another quirk of this combination is that once we master a set of skills or knowledge or information and it loses that stimulating ability, we get bored with it. This is that low intensity fatigue. Once it's no longer intense enough, no longer gives us enough challenge to process, then we move on to something else. As we grow older, we develop a very long list of areas in which we have specialty skills and knowledge and expertise that seem totally disconnected. They seem like they don't have anything to do with each other. That allows our deep processing HSP brain to draw connections that other people just don't see. This is one of our superpowers. The more of these things that we engage in and the more different they are, the more connections we make and the more powerful we become. Let's face it, we can't always choose how we're going to spend our time. We can't immerse ourselves in the perfect complex novelty all the time. So how do we deal with the times when we're not in our ideal situation? By practicing what I call rhythmic transitioning. The key to this is to ideally recognize in advance when you're going to be in an understimulating situation or when you're going to be in an overstimulating situation. And now that you're aware of how your biology works, I'm sure you can begin to see patterns in your life that are already standing out. So just pay more attention to those. Whenever you know you're going to be heading into a high stimulation environment, like say a live stadium game or a convention or a party, build time into your schedule before and after for low stimulating situations. So this could be meditating, reading a book, taking a nice long bath, whatever it is that you do that really relaxes you. Build that into your schedule before and after. Before, you might even force yourself to endure some time of boredom. So that part of your brain that craves stimulation is kind of like, okay, let me at it, let me go. So that when you go into that high stimulation thing, it feels good. It's like, yes, this is what I wanted. And then when you're done, then you go into that low stimulation environment. You're like, this is what I needed. And in that time after, what you're doing is you're allowing your brain to cool down and to process everything it's just experienced, because that deep processing brain isn't going to shut off just because you left that high stimulation environment. It needs to work through all that stuff. So just give yourself time and space to do that. The flip side of this is when you know you're going to be in a very low stimulating environment, like say you've got a cross-country flight that you've got to take, or you're going to be in a long, unnecessary meeting that's just going to have you rolling your eyes for hours and you're just going to be draining. In those cases, build in high stimulating activities before. Do something that's going to give you that high stimulation so that when you go into that low stimulation environment, it's actually restorative. Maybe you can have a private dance party with your headphones in your office before you go to that meeting, or right before that meeting is a good time for you to get in your rock climbing at the gym, and you won't be constantly looking for that new engaging stimulation in that low stimulation environment. Now's the part I'm really excited about. It's what I call taming the paradox. Like I said, for most of my life, I felt like these two sides of me were at war with each other. And it just didn't make sense to me why nature would build something like this. Until I figured out that when you get them to work together, when they complement each other instead of compete, you unlock something very powerful. Because in the right circumstances, the combination of a highly sensitive person and high sensation seeking creates the ability for really deep learning that most people can't even match. When we focus our attention on our subject, whatever it is that interests us, we go deep. We ask questions other people don't even think to ask. We get into nuance and minutia, and we just cannot get enough. We just dig. We want more and more and more. And it feels like we're never satisfied. We like to play with that information. We need to see something from every perspective. Embrace that. Go deep. Get intense. Indulge your need to know. If you find yourself constantly thinking about a particular thing that no one else finds interesting, that's a sign that's something that's really engaging your brain. Go find out about it. Go research it. Read books, find seminars, watch videos, take a class, whatever it is. Get the tools and start experimenting with it. Follow that rabbit hole. Our process of learning looks different than other people's. And sometimes it can look like we're actually a little slow in picking up a topic. It's going to be really frustrating when you see other people seem to be mastering it ahead of you until you realize that they don't have it on the same depth of understanding that you do. Let me give you an example of how this works. When I started riding motorcycles, I took a course. It appeared to my instructors that I really shouldn't be on a bike. I was asking questions that they just rolled their eyes at. They would spend 20 minutes on an exercise and then move on to the next one. And I felt like I wasn't ready to move on to the next one. I didn't feel like I fully understood whatever it is we were supposed to be doing. After I finished the course and I started doing drills every day, and I do mean every day, 7 days a week, in a parking lot, I experimented and tried all kinds of different things until I knew it inside and out. I slowly ratcheted up the intensity. And this is how our brains work. We want to know all the details of one particular tiny little subject until we feel like we fully understand it. Then we move up to the next level, and next level. Now when I meet other riders, sometimes people who've been riding for years or decades longer than me, and I ask them questions about things, I realize they don't have the depth of understanding that I do. It wasn't good enough for me to just do it. I had to understand why. But that desire to learn it is exactly what primes us for our ideal situation where we're under a lot of pressure and we know exactly how to act because we already know it inside and out. When you describe high sensation seeking to most people, they're immediately going to think of an adrenaline junkie. But when you pair it with HSP, you get someone who is formidable. This is a unique gift. We're primed for high pressure situations. We're able to analyze risk. We're able to predict problems and solve them as they're unfolding because we have that deep knowledge that we've built up over time. We're able to draw on resources that other people don't because we're able to sense subtleties and have deep empathy and the ability to process deeply. We're able to take in more information in the moment and make sense of it. We are not as timid as most highly sensitive people, but we're also not as rash as most high sensation seekers. We're a perfect middle ground. And this is why the restless orchids emerge as the quiet leaders when the assigned leaders are crumbling. We have empathy, we have deep knowledge, and we remain calm in those tense situations. And that gives the people around us trust. They know they can look to us and they know they can count on us. You were built to handle the high pressure situations that overwhelm other people while maintaining the humanity that other leaders lack. Embrace your intensity. Trust your sensitivity and stop living a muted life and start living the vivid one you were meant for. Living that vivid, meaningful life feels amazing, but if you don't have the tools in place to protect your highly sensitive nervous system, it can get overwhelming and become too loud, too much, very fast. That's why I created this next video, the HSP Survival Guide, where I give you 8 strategies that allow HSPs to protect their nervous system and give themselves the space they need when they need it. So check that out next.